Okay, so we've seen how the multi-step experiment counting rule works. Let's now look at a few examples where it's impossible for you to list the outcomes. So the only way for you to do these examples would be to use the formula. So suppose that license plates must have 3 letters followed by 3 digits. How many different license plates are possible? So what's the number of possible license plates? Right. So let's think of it this way. Right? License plate must have 3 letters followed by 3 digits. So the format looks as follows. You're gonna have L1 being the first letter, L2 being the second letter, L3 being the third letter, and then we're gonna have D1, D2, and D3. So we want to know the number of possible license plates. Let's think of this as a 6-step experiment. So in step 1, you pick L1. In step 2, you pick L2. Right. In step 3, you pick L3, and so on. Right. You get the idea. In step 4, you want to pick D1. In step 5, you pick D2, and then in step 6, you pick D3. So now when you pick L1, how many possible outcomes are there? You have 26 options for L1. Right? Similarly, you have 26 options for L2, 26 options for L3. You have 10 options for D1, 10 options for D2, and then 10 options for D3. So 26. So you have A through Z, right? And then for digits, you have 0 through 9. Okay? And so you have these numbers, right? These outcomes for these individual steps. And so the total number of license plate number of possible license plates is going to be equal to 26 times 26 times 26 times 10 times 10 times 10. And so if you do the math, this gives you 17,567,000. Okay. This is a very large number, right? So you do not want to be sitting down all day and listing the all the possible license plates. Okay. Now let's do a follow-up question. Suppose that we still have the same format for license plates, but the question becomes, what's the number of possible license plates such that no letter or digit is repeated. Okay. So now let's the format of the license plates is still L1, L2, L3, D1, D2, and D3. In the first step, you pick L1, you still have 26 options. Okay. How many options do we have for L2? If we have picked one letter for L1, then we cannot pick it again, right? So when it comes to L2, you only have 25 options. Okay, and then when it comes time for you to pick L3, you cannot pick the same letter as L1, and you cannot pick the same letter as L2. And so in other words, you only have 24 options to pick from. Okay. By the same logic, when you pick D1, you start out with 10 options, right? When it comes to D2, you cannot pick the same number as D1, so that gives you 9 options, and then for D3 you have 8 options. And so the number of possible license plate in this case is equal to 26 times 25 times 24 times 10 times 9 times 8, which is equal to 11,232,000. Okay. So let's do another example. Suppose you're on a road trip and you have a list of 7 cities to visit. So visit 7 cities on road trip. Okay. How many different routes are possible? So now think of this problem, right? When you do this kind of problem, you always want to think, what's the first step? What's the second step? How many total steps do I have, right? So in this case, you want to visit 7 cities. And so your first step is one where you pick the first city to visit. Right? In step 2, you want to pick the second city to visit, right? In step 3, you want to pick the third city, and so on and so forth, all the way to step 7, which is the step where you pick the 7th city. So now for the first step, it's the first city. You haven't visited anywhere, right? So you have 7 options to choose from. In step number 2, you want to pick the second city, but the second city cannot be the same as the first city. And so you would end up with 6 options for step number 2, and then 5 options for step number 3, 4 options for step 4, and so on and so forth, until you end up with only 1 option when it comes to the last city in step number 7. And so the total number of possible routes is going to be equal to 7 times 6 times 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, and that gives you 5,040 different routes. So in this video, we looked at a few examples where we apply the multi-step experiment counting rule, but in these problems, we cannot list. It's not feasible for us to list the outcomes to verify the solution we get from the formula.